Guys of a Certain Age is brought to you by no one. Absolutely no one. Except these dudes walking down memory lane. Now let's head to the studio to see what they misremember next.
It's the almost summer vacation version of Guys of a Certain Age. At least one of us is about to get out of here. Robbie Copeland's in studio alongside
Art Shirley
and Jay Reed.
Jay, you have to talk faster because I have to leave after this. So that was way too slow, Jay. I'm recording. I'm timing. Okay. Eeyore. Winnie the Pooh.
Nobody likes me.
That's really good. It's a very good Eeyore.
Oh, was that Eeyore? I was just actually saying.
You were doing your Jay.
I was just doing an open monologue.
I thought you were doing your Jay impersonation.
Oh.
Bless your heart. All right, let's jump into some Geeks of the Week. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Quick news about Star Trek, the movie universe. We talked a little bit about this a couple of weeks ago, I think, last time I was here. They have shelved all projects involving the Chris Pine, the Kelvin universe, that whole group of movies. They're not going to do a fourth Star Trek with that crew.
Because all the actors wanted way too much
because
money.
they wanted way too much. And
they're all famous
And
now.
really, the last movie didn't perform all that well.
No, it wasn't very good.
Also, they're doing really well with their TV stuff. I think we've mentioned it, especially Strange New Worlds is doing real well. But they are going to go back and do a movie, and they've already got Holly Hunter attached to it. Oscar-winning actress Holly Hunter is going to be in a Star Trek. It's considered a prequel to the Kelvin universe, but I guess if you're a prequel to the Kelvin universe, aren't you just basically in the Star Trek universe?
You're
because
a prequel to all
changed
universes, yeah.
So it's going to be Starfleet Academy is what the I don't know if that's the title, but that's what the focus is of it. So we're going to look back at. And you wonder if it's kind of aged, aimed at a young, like a Harry Potter type.
It sounds like Hogwarts before
that's right. It's also going to include the first contact, that humans made with an alien race, which I think has been done already.
Well, yeah, I mean
first contacts. So they said they may be retconning a lot of, which I don't think is going to be very popular.
Star Trek First Contact.
Guess what? That's
Yeah.
about First Contact.
Yeah,
because we didn't do our research.
Because that's when Zach Efron, cranks up the warp drive and the Vulcans show up because that's what the Vulcans were looking for.
Right.
You have to be able to generate a warp drive signature in order to be civilized life.
Yes, that was the thing that they sought out.
Yeah.
And so that's happened. So you wonder what they're going to do to retcon it. There's going to be some other things too. It says it may even take place along the Enterprise timeline, the series that Scott Bakula was in. Again, to me, it just seems like something that's probably not anybody's looking for. And so I'm curious. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. I could be wrong again.
A solution that doesn't have a problem.
That's exactly what.
Kind of like the recent camera ordinance here in Starkville that was defeated.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Very much like that.
We don't talk about politics on this podcast.
But anyway, so that's what's coming up in the Star Trek world. I'll be interested to see if it happens at all.
Cool. Yeah. We've talked about this. You're not watching Discovery at all. Apparently,
No.
Discovery has got some callbacks to Mirror Universe Enterprise.
I think we're pretty close to wrapping that season up. I think they're close. They may have already.
And wrapping the series up.
Yeah, right. Series finale as well. So I may go back and watch this season just to kind of see. And because we do have Paramount now as part of some of the package we've got. So.
You're on the Paramount bandwagon.
Yes, Paramount bandwagon, which we really like Paramount.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Did either one of you guys watch Masters of the Air?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We're like one episode away from finishing it.
We watched
you
it.
Like it?
We watched it. I loved it. Yeah, I think we talked about it at some point on here, and I think I was the only one. I guess I was the only one.
I thought you had it
because we were watching it. We were watching it, in real time as it came out. It was appointment television.
You went back to World War II and watched it.
That's right. Yeah, we lived it. But I really liked it a lot. Have you started it yet?
No, I've got it downloaded in my iPad as we
to watch
go to the beach while everybody else goes to the beach.
A reminder yet again, Jay, that he's going to the beach.
Yeah,
we are not.
So you one episode shy of watching?
Yeah, we're watching it with Mr. and Mrs. Reed, and
okay,
we just
great.
kind of on a week to week, and we've had a couple of weeks where we hadn't had time to do it. So
I strongly recommend watching the documentary afterwards.
Okay,
It's an hour-long documentary.
That.
Yeah, so.
Cool.
That's good.
Well,
add that to my
I hope to
list.
jump into that.
Yeah, it's very good.
Along with some other Apple TV stuff. So, all right, Jay, what you got for a geek?
Well, I got a couple of obits that have come across our pages lately. We'll do a quick one first. This one. Do you know the name Susan Backlinie?
We did not.
Until, yeah.
No, still don't.
She is someone that you know, but you just don't know because you don't know her name. She was the woman eaten by the shark in Jaws.
Oh, my gosh. Yes.
You know.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I admit that I still haven't seen Jaws?
You need to see it at the beach this weekend.
Yeah, no.
Did you say you were going to the beach?
Yeah, I think we're going to the beach. Well, members of my family going to the beach. I'm going to stay in the condo.
It's a movie that I will watch over and over again.
I think I've seen it, but it's been a long time.
Oh,
but
I love it.
She passed away, and I was looking back at her, IMDb. She's got some other credits. She was in 1941 as the polar bear woman, so not big credits.
Well,
but
that's a Spielberg thing, so he kind of gave her that again.
Okay,
so,
okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And ironically, she was in The Great Muppet Caper, and her role here was Sharky's Sharky's water ballet performer.
Oh, wow.
So that
Sorry.
almost, I don't know if that's ironic if that was on purpose.
And I
or
can't
whatever.
remember if she was actually an actress when she started, or she just kind of, I guess she was, but.
Yeah, I mean, Jaws is probably her most famous, but she wasn't in that very long, was she?
No, but it's an incredible scene.
Right,
And
right.
the behind the scenes of Jaws, you need to watch it, and then the behind the scenes stuff is incredible what they did.
Well, when you look through her IMDb page, a lot of the stuff is behind the scenes Jaws and that
probably
kind of stuff.
or like you said, the Muppet thing, something that is a takeoff or a parody of what she
Right,
did. Yeah.
right.
So she passed away.
She passed away
How
a
old
week or
was
two
she?
ago.
79, something like that, or-
She died she born in 46, so gosh,
she was younger than that.
78.
78, 79? Okay.
Right up, yep. So long life. Not on the screen very long, but and then the other one that I think we need to mention is Dabney Coleman.
Yeah, Dabney Coleman.
Obviously 9 to 5 was one of his
Working
big
9 to
things.
5.
War Games would be more sort of along our lines of.
Would you
I had
like to
forgotten
play a
he was
game?
in War Games.
He was the
That's
big-
one of the first things I can remember seeing him in.
Yeah, and I'd forgotten about that too. Tootsie, he was in.
Yeah, I remember Tootsie.
And I didn't realize. I'm sure I looked it up because I never watch anything without my IMDb app at my side.
Yes.
Really?
But he was on Yellowstone.
Ball games. It's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
At the stadium.
I always Melissa and I always want. Where
Oh,
did
we
see
do that
person
too.
Before?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So we do that all the time. So he was in Yellowstone. That was maybe his
Okay.
last role.
Probably was.
And I have to confess, when I see pictures of him now, like I would have had to look him up. That's what I'm saying about the app. I would have had to
Yeah,
look
I saw
up and see
a
who is
recent
this
picture
guy.
of him. And he did not look like what you think about. And of course, we have this picture of him.
Right. It's
but,
all that 9 to 5 era.
Yes,
Is that the picture?
He was in Buffalo Bill. Had that series Buffalo Bill for a while,
Saw
which
that.
I don't know if it lasted more than a couple of seasons, but
He looks like I would have remembered he looked like. I mean, with recent photos.
okay.
Well, if you know it's him, he looks like him. But if you're not sure, he was he Tom Hanks' dad?
You
got
weren't looking
mail?
at pictures of Gary Coleman.
No. A little different, but actually, I think he might have been in that because I saw a picture
What
of
you
him
talking about, Art?
with Mr. Drummond and what was the maid's name that went to?
They had her own show afterwards.
Yeah.
Facts of Life with Facts of Life.
Mrs.
Gosh. We don't have time to figure
It was a
this
picture
out.
it was a picture with him and Mr. Drummond and the.
She went
the
to Facts of
housekeeper.
Life, right?
She was one of the main characters.
Gosh, dog, I can almost see.
So Boardwalk
Facts of
Empire
Life.
he was in. Yeah, we can all.
Facts of Life.
You take the
This is
good,
why we let
take
Art
the
take
bad. You take them all.
And there you had it.
Charlotte Ray as Edna Garrett.
Edna
Edna
Garrett.
Garrett.
Mrs. Garrett.
Mrs. Garrett.
Do you know who else got their start on that show?
Blair.
Well, yeah, which was Lisa Whelchel.
Mindy
which had-
Kahn, did she start on that show?
Mindy Kahn was on that
Molly
show.
Ringwald was in the first season.
But there's somebody much bigger than any of these people.
Oh, George Clooney was
George
in it. Yeah.
Clooney was on.
Yeah.
On
wow, I
Facts of
forgot
Life.
about that.
Yeah, that's right. So
Yeah. So anyway, Dabney Coleman. I mean, that's iconic. Maybe not so much. I doubt his geek score or whatever we decided to call it would be Geek Index would be very high.
no,
We don't
he
have
has-
time to do that either.
We don't have time to do that. He has a very low geek index. Just doing a,
But he
first
did
person.
really well. They one little thing I read said that he kind of fell into this typecast in a way.
Yeah, I can
like
see
the
that.
sort of the 9 to 5 bad
That
boss
character all the time.
basically
Yeah.
mid upper level bad management. Yeah.
But did
So
it
he
very
would have
well.
played me.
I was going to say what we all aspire to be. So he was in Jumanji, the TV series.
Really?
There was
Yeah.
a TV series on Jumanji?
Yeah, there was.
Wow.
He was the voice, and he was in Stuart Little. He was in Taken. There was something else.
Inspector Gadget.
Yeah, there was something else that he was maybe sort of qualified
Magic
there.
School Bus. Target Earth. What was Target Earth?
I don't know. That was after Battlefield. That was the budget Battlefield Earth, as opposed to the Walmart Earth.
Yeah.
I was playing Mr. Drysdale in the Beverly Hillbillies movie.
Yeah, that's pretty good casting right there.
Mr. Drysdale.
Mrs. Drysdale, not so much, but Mr.
No,
Drysdale.
that's right. So
Yeah.
he's like one of the very few actors of his caliber who did not have a guest shot on The West Wing. I was looking to see if he was on The West Wing, but no. Anyway, there you go.
Yeah, so R.I.P.
R.I.P. So anything else on your geekage of the weekage? All right. So speaking of the Star Trek universe, the current showrunner of Star Trek Picard, Terry Matalas, when he finishes, well, he's done with Picard, but he's going to pick up the new Vision series for Disney Plus for the Marvel Motion Universe, I guess the MMU, whatever you want to call it. So if you guys recall at the end of WandaVision, Wanda had resurrected the Vision from her memories, and he was the white Vision, completely white, kind of like my legs before we go to the beach. And
Are you going to the beach?
Yeah. And so Paul Bettany is coming back to start in this limited series. So
Also Paul Bettany.
I love Paul Bettany. So he would have a fairly high geek index.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
So anyway, that's going to be coming down the pipe. If you guys recall a few weeks ago, Robert Iger basically said, hey, we're going to do less movies, less TV series, and try to make Marvel and Star Wars
it still
better.
seemed like a lot.
Well, I mean, it's on the back end of what we've got coming along.
Yeah,
so,
okay.
I mean, you've got the Agatha All Along series, which was in development before
Right,
Iger
that's
got
true.
back. So you've got WandaVision. I don't know what else we're gonna. I'm looking at the article from the 7th, but it's going to be interesting to see how they streamline. They've talked about X-Men 97 being just such a big hit. Either one of you guys watched?
I watched a couple episodes of that. I liked it. I just hadn't gone back to watch it again.
Yeah, it probably didn't pull you in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it was like I said. It was. I was probably more interested in it for the nostalgia and the way it looked like the old series.
Yeah.
But the series itself was kind of. I felt it was a little slow when I saw.
Okay.
Did you?
I have not watched. I've seen like the first half of the
and
first
so maybe I need
episode.
to watch more of them. But
I haven't gotten pretty deep into it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Disney, with all their properties going forward. 2 years from today, as we record, is supposed to be the Mandalorian and Grogu movie premiere. They've got to do a better job.
Yeah.
So, and in a few
that
weeks,
should be the title.
Yeah, they've got to do a better job. And then you've got Star Wars Alkalite coming out in a couple of weeks. I think June 5 is when that.
Also known as Acolyte.
Alkalite, whatever. I've got a button over here. All right, Jay's gone. So
That's when I start screaming.
yeah, that's okay. Well, we'll commit you sooner than we were planning on.
The listeners are way ahead of you.
Yeah.
Make it stop.
Oh, bless his heart. Bless his heart. So
That was at all of us. That was not.
was it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good.
is now.
It is now. So, all right. Well, that does it for my geek. Now it's time for
Jay's Regrettable Segment. Jay's Regrettable Segment is brought to you by. Oh, we don't have time for that today because Robbie's going to the beach.
Is that where I'm going?
That's going to the beach.
Yeah.
And I started to mention that as a sponsor where he's going, but we don't want the public to know.
Oh, no.
I don't know that I really know.
Paparazzi would be all over.
The paparazzi.
Well, they would also show it 3 weeks late.
Yeah, well, that would be a problem.
This is where Robbie was. Robbie slipped here. He didn't go to the beach, but he went to.
He actually doesn't like the beach, right? You don't particularly care.
I'm
for
not a
the beach.
big beach fan, but that's okay. It's
so
fun.
today's maybe or maybe not heroes, Nightmare and Sleepy.
I saw that. I'm looking at that. That's
Nightmare and Sleepy.
Nightmare and Sleepy.
That was the second title for our show. That was the second choice.
Again, this could be my life story.
This one is
Nightmare
I'm just
and
going to go ahead
Sleepy.
and say it's a bit weak. Clue Comics #1 from January of 1943.
So when you went to the dime store to get the comic book, did you say, "Hey, Mom, I'm going to get a clue"?
Oh.
Okay, sorry.
Probably not. I don't think that was really a saying that day in 1943. But Nightmare was a professional
Let's
wrestler.
ask Art.
Actually, what we would say is, yes.
So you got this professional
I'm going
wrestler.
to buy a printed periodical, mother.
That's what they said in England in the alternate universe that Art lived in.
That's right.
Okay, so Nightmare was a wrestler, and get this, Sleepy was his manager sidekick, teenage manager sidekick.
Wait.
So
Nightmare
All
was
right,
a
wait a minute.
wrestler.
Bob White was the wrestler. He wore a phosphorescent skeleton costume.
Okay.
Terry Wake was the teenage manager of the wrestler, and also a.k.a. Sleepy, who basically wore a white footy pajamas and a red hood.
Okay.
Yeah, it looked kind of, I don't know, it was odd. So really no supernatural powers, no superhuman strength.
Regrettable.
Yep.
You think? Because here's what I'm thinking.
Uh-oh.
Recast it a little bit. You put The Rock as the wrestler. You make Kevin Hart his manager. I'm talking gold right here. Nightmare and Sleepy. That would be all, I mean, that would be good.
I don't know. You just changed my thought on that. I was definitely going regrettable on this one, but
So if we retconned it,
Yeah, we
Yeah.
retcon it.
Yeah.
The Rock's going to play. Yeah.
yeah. But as far as the comic itself, they began fighting a medieval spirit named Undertaker, also known as the Robber Baron, which makes no sense.
Undertaker from
I was gonna
WWE.
say,
I mean,
actually-
yeah, well, exactly.
So you've got that cast.
Yeah, and this is maybe the worst villain name ever: the corpse that steals living men's faces. I mean, that's just too long. But they changed costumes and went about beating up thugs and Nazis. And then the last iteration was a crime. This was just Nightmare. Apparently, Sleepy had gone to bed. Crime-fighting genie summoned by the smoking of a hand-wrapped cigar by Detective Nosy McGinnis, and then that was the end. So
The Rock and
evolution
Kevin
was
Hart
ridiculous.
can't save this at this point.
We need to keep, if we're doing the remake, it needs to be just the initial iteration.
Yes. But
But I think overall it's regrettable.
regrettable.
Yeah.
Absolutely regrettable.
Sorry, Nightmare.
What about Sleepy? Are you sorry for Sleepy?
I really didn't see much of a role for him to begin with. He just managed the nightmares.
Yeah. So we put that one to bed.
Yes. This has been Jay's Regrettable segment, brought to you by Coppertone SPF 55, which Robbie will be using when he goes to the beach, for those of you who haven't heard that that's where he's going.
All right. Let's take a stroll down nostalgia lane.
Oh, yeah.
Up next. You've heard us wax eloquently about the days of live radio, and two of the three of us lived those days.
With stacks of wax, your hits from coast to coast. Actually, just from the borders of West Point. Maybe.
These are my radio days now.
Yeah, they really are. So, yet again, Jay's 20 years behind.
That's right.
I wanted to be. I thought it would be cool. I wanted to be a DJ. It just never happened.
Oh, man.
It was a great job, fun job, but as we were talking about off mic, not a lot of pay.
No, you were lucky if you got minimum wage.
Yeah.
I mean, and not a lot of pay, period. But it was one of the coolest jobs. You could say, hey,
Absolutely was.
I'm a DJ at insert radio station. It was it kind of gave you a most DJs were pretty introverted,
Yeah,
but they
I would
got
think that's like I said,
shy.
I don't think that applies to either one of us.
Yeah.
but I would think most of the folks, especially those that did it, ended up making careers of it, they absolutely were.
Yeah.
They had a radio personality, but you would never know who they were on the street.
I'm in a dark room with a microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes not a dark room.
Yeah.
But usually a small room.
Yeah.
So, but this last week on Mississippi Public Broadcasting, the movie, it's called WZZQ The Movie premiered. It was on Monday night. I was aware that it was being made. I never listened to WZZQ in Jackson because it came and gone before I was really aware of.
Right, because it really kicked in, 73, they said. Now, it had been WJDZ before then.
WJDX.
Oh, I'm sorry, WJDX, yeah. Before then, for a long time, and then it went to an album-oriented rock station under those call letters. And then management, they got underneath management, they decided to give it new life, and they rebranded it WZZQ.
Which I did not realize how influential WZZQ out of Jackson was.
Right, yeah, same here. And I had forgotten, they mentioned they kind of helped break Dan Fogelberg because they were the only ones.
That was a fascinating.
Yeah, and I'd heard that story before, and as they started to say, I know what this is about. So Dan
Whoops.
Oops.
Welcome to Wrexham.
Dan Fogelberg was only playing colleges when he started out in 74, I think, whatever, and they had gotten his album at WZZQ and loved it. We're playing the whole album and had a huge following. So he does this, first really big concert there. And after that, the larger networks, larger areas would start carrying New York.
Yeah, I love the description of his manager or producer talking about how he called and said, "There's 2,000 people here."
Yeah.
So just to set the stage, in Jackson, back in the 60s and 70s, as FM radio came on the scene, nobody listened to FM. It was superior from a technology standpoint, but most cars only had AM radios.
Right.
And so FM became kind of the afterthought. And
that was fascinating.
Yeah. And I remember that Meridian. I remembered, I forgot what station. I guess it was WOKK, which was country, which started as WALT on the AM side, and they flipped from AM to FM to 97.1, like sometime in the early 80s, and that was a big deal. But FM, the FCC basically gave those FM licenses out, hoping folks would put programming on.
Yeah.
And so WJDX was owned and operated by Lamar Life Insurance, which also owned WLBT, which there's some other things associated with WLBT that were pretty instrumental.
Yeah.
Did you know that story?
I did not know that story.
I'd heard that story, but basically the FCC brought in the Justice Department brought a racial discrimination suit against WLBT. Long story short, WJDX gets an FM license. They don't know what to do with it. They start playing this rock and roll stuff because nobody's listening to it. And then kind of like the way we view AM today, nobody listens to it. And it became popular. They had a management change. They went with the new call letters, WZZQ, and they became this legend of album-oriented rock. Yeah. And it lasted until 82?
81.
81?
July 81 is when it is.
Yeah. And so I had heard about WZZQ, but had never heard WZZQ. And so Ann Ford, who is a Mississippi writer, director, producer, she did this hour-long movie about WZZQ and the influence. And the people involved that they interviewed in that movie were pretty fascinating.
Oh, very much so. I mean, it's almost like watching real-life WKRP people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Johnny Fever.
Well, Ward Emling, who was interviewed on that, he was the longtime film commissioner for the state of Mississippi.
Okay.
And Robert St. John, a restaurateur who's got a half a dozen restaurants around the state, he was interviewed. He was a big WZZQ fan. And see, they had a WZZQ reunion about a year ago.
Okay.
Which was at not Thalia Mara. What's the performance hall down in what's that? No, not Thalia Mara. It's the one right next to where it's in Fondren. I cannot remember.
I know what you're talking about.
I've shot there. But anyway, they had a reunion there, so they shot a bunch of interviews. And so this is an hour-long documentary about an influential rock station in Jackson, Mississippi. I think, why should I watch that? It was the first AOR, album-oriented rock FM station
in Mississippi, or
in the South, in the Southeast.
Okay, yeah.
And so it became incredibly. There were a lot of things that happened. There were a lot of. They would take folks to Memphis on
took
buses.
Road trips to concerts, talking about going to Chicago, and those were apparently some really wild times.
Party buses.
He said, we left the day before and still got there late.
Yeah, and before we got on the bus, we were naked at the reservoir.
I was like, that's right.
Further details.
We were born too late, gentlemen.
That's right. But I wasn't, as we pointed out.
You were too old.
I was
back
too
then.
old. That's right.
So
where's the Bing Crosby, for Pete's sake?
Well, then it sounded like they were given a lot of freedom, especially in the earliest
because
days.
nobody was listening.
Nobody cared.
Yeah.
But that's what made them. I got the feeling that's what made them so iconic.
Yeah,
is they had that freedom for so long.
And they kept calling themselves freaks, very much in line with the Freak Brothers and all that stuff that was going on. And that you associated with California, probably primarily New York too, but certainly not Jackson, Mississippi necessarily. But they hosted a lot of events. They had they did things at the fair. They talked about the remote vehicle that they had, the big glass wagon, and it's incredible to think it really only lasted about 7 or 8 years.
But it was that influential, and that that well remembered with that generation.
And I remember, in college, friends of mine that were from Jackson and the Jackson area, all of them had the WZZQ bumper stickers on their, coolers and, T-shirts and all that kind of stuff, and they were huge fans of it. But I was kind of the same way you were. I don't remember hearing it. Now, George Abon, friend of the show.
Hello, George.
And another friend of ours, Don Connolly, listened to it. Then they said that because they had older brothers that were aware of it, they were listening to it. And they're one of the few people I knew that had like a true stereo system. With, I had just an AM radio. And our big thing was trying to pick up WLAC when it got dark, got late at night or whatever. You could pick that up.
Yeah.
But we really didn't, like you were saying, we didn't have FM radios. We had one in our home. And, the parents were listening to easy listening stuff on that.
Yeah.
So we didn't hear it. So we didn't know about it. But until, these friends of mine introduced me to it.
Well, I thought that was a fascinating part of the story is they knew nobody had AM radios in their car, so they sold these FM converters.
Yeah, because I remember those FM converters too. Do y'all remember seeing those things? You had that in an 8-track tape player and a FM converter all hooked in under your car.
Yeah, no, I remember.
Radio Shack, again, they sold those kind of things.
Radio Shack, yeah.
But those commercials, they did.
And then people were requesting the commercials.
The pothole. I mean, that was hilarious.
And it still happens today. Yeah. You get lost in a pothole in Jackson.
I thought that was, apparently nothing's changed that much. That
I was talking to Kathy Kinney, who Art and I both worked with. She grew up in Jackson.
Yeah, that's right.
And she went to we were talking about a couple of days ago, she said she went to a small private Baptist, like through 7th grade school in Jackson. Then she went to Jackson Prep. And she said, like, 8th grade, she walks in, and there's this wild mural with WZZQ in the middle of it. She's like, oh, cool. I've made it to the cool people,
Yeah.
And so it was that influential. But I think in a text message to you guys, I said, I had kind of the same feelings that those guys had about Q101 and Meridian, WJDX. Wasn't as, it was a 100,000 watt station. It didn't have the impact that ZZQ did. But it had,
well, that's what we were talking about. What's your station that you remember growing up, if there was one?
Yeah. But it did have a fairly large impact because it bled over into Alabama, and they had their morning crew. They did their pre-produced bits like that. So there was a lot of nostalgia there for me. So.
And Rock 103 from Memphis is probably the closest local station because we, again, it was an FM station, but we could pick it up. This was later, and we certainly listened to it when I was at school, but in college. But so there are stations that you just kind of, and this is one thing I liked about they said in the documentary that was when WZZQ ended. He said that was radio for a lot of these people. It wasn't just a radio station. It was their soul. It was locked into that station.
A lot like MTV we had talked about a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I thought about the same thing.
How you would put it on, and that's where your television lived. It regardless,
tune it in and turn off and break off the knobs.
That's it. That's right. Yeah, regardless of whether you're paying attention to what's on the shot. On the screen or whatnot. So
but I thought too about they said that FM in a lot of ways was being used to play classical music, this kind of thing. And, where I worked, WROB AM, WKBB FM, the FM station was an automated thing, reel to reels, and it was playing, not necessarily classical, but certainly easy listening music, from the 40s and 50s. And
probably programmed by Century 21.
No, it was actually done before that. I think they got that thing later, but the owner of the station or the program director of the station actually put those reels together. And everything was automated. So it would, when it was time for a commercial, it would click, didn't matter where in the song it was, it would stop, play the carts of the commercials, whatever. And they were all loaded up in this bin that would go. And so you're thinking now, wow, I can't believe they dedicated the FM part of that.
Yeah.
But that's what it was. And this was, I was there until like 84, did some stuff through college. And it was still that way. And AM was doing, top 40 and then R&B at night. But it was just, it's weird now to think that the AM was the big, it was, and FM was kind of a lost leader for me,
So I got, the only time I've ever been fired, I got fired from WFEZ before, and I went back to work when it was WMER, but I got fired from WFEZ because I screwed up the automation system. It had like all 5 reels running at the same time, and it burned out the power supply. Ooh. And then I kicked it because I was so mad, and I dented one of the front cart players.
Wow.
So Terry Barber calls me in the next day. And I guess it was WMER. He's got my check preps. Like, sorry, man, we got to let you go.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I got into television after that, and Terry Barber, who I've stayed in contact with through the years, Terry was president of the Mississippi Association of Broadcasters when I won my first television production award, major award for commercial production, and his signature is on the certificate.
Yeah.
So he takes credit for everything I've ever done in TV because he's like, Robbie, if I hadn't fired you, you'd still be doing radio, you know. So,
but yeah, the main thing we had to do is make sure when the reel ran out that you were there to swap the reel out and do that. But
I've got a Century 21 programming manual in there in my office that I may or may not have borrowed from WMER. Back in the day, but it's hilarious to look at that, you know, how that automated system worked, and you would get new reels every week or two, you know, and you put those reels in, and you would have 60 to 90 minutes of music, with six.
And I may be misremembering it, but I thought this was something that Jack King put together.
Oh, very well could have, because when we went with the Christian rock format, because we had a cable cast FM, and so we'd made our own Christian rock reels, and you'd put a guard tone at the end of when you're going to start the fade. So 2, 3, 4 seconds before, the song ended, you would punch a button, and it would have a high frequency tone that none of us could hear.
Yeah.
But the machine could pick up, and it would cue the next song to start.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
And then you would tell it to do play reels 1, 2, 3, 4. A tune from each of those reels, and go to cart 1, cart 2, cart 3 for commercials, and come back to, and that's how you program it. So, but
I was kind of fascinated by just watching the documentary. First thing I saw was Eudora Welty's father was the president of Lamar Life or something like that. And I'm sure it was before WZZQ, but they said she was the first copywriter.
Yeah, and I said Nepo baby.
Right. But pretty good, good writer. She turned out all right. So I thought that was kind of fascinating.
That kid's got talent. She's going to go somewhere.
Yeah, she's going to go somewhere.
Yeah. And then also Perez.
Was her dad an optimist? Her big book was The Optimist Daughter.
Oh. I confess, you've made the confession about Jaws. I haven't read a lot of Eudora Welty.
Yeah, whatever I read in school, I read.
Yeah.
But also, another one of the people that was interviewed.
The silence was golden.
Yeah. Perez.
Terrible.
I mean, that's the book she won the Pulitzer for. Was The Optimist Daughter.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And
great. Well, I'm glad I brought it up. So you can bring
never mind. Let's just go back to.
I think we can all agree she's much more better known as Lamar Life copywriter.
Right.
and one semester attender of the Mississippi University for Women.
This is Eudora Welty on WZZQ.
Let's rock!
Oh, boy. So, if anybody listened, we'd be in trouble.
Yeah, so that was the one person I knew. The other person I knew was Perez. Because he is still on the radio.
Yeah. Is he really?
Yeah, Super Talk. He produces the Gallo show for Super Talk.
Oh,
but he's all the way through it. I mean, he's like a sidekick.
I thought he'd retired from.
Well, I looked at the. He's still on staff as the producer, according to the website a few hours ago.
Yeah, that's good. Randy Bell, who did news there, who is probably the most decorated radio news person.
He looked familiar.
Me too. Becky and I both thought he looked.
I've met him a couple times.
He's
been all over the place. I forget the Pinkerton, the gentleman, the African-American gentleman they interviewed who ended up as
fascinating story.
CBS commentator, reporter.
They showed him. I said, gosh, I know I've seen him a bunch of times.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you think about all the people who came through there.
It's an amazing thing.
Well, Jay, what was your station growing up?
That's what I was going to ask,
WSSO would have been the AM station, I believe. And then WKOR was
WKOR,
which metamorphosized many times over the course.
Yeah, December 3rd, 1991. It goes from
that might have been one of the times.
Hot Country. It goes from Hit Radio 92 KOR to Hot Country K92.
Yeah.
I was there. Yeah, I have the T-shirts on both sides of that.
See, and that's one of the things I thought was funny. The metamorphosis of. WZZQ, and I mean, it seems like.
But the last station I worked at, and this would have been in 84 or 85, worked for WCBI radio for about 6 weeks.
Cool.
Well, it was just I found another job. I mean, I got it just to kind of make ends meet. But the one reason I found another job is because they were switching to radio to country.
Okay.
As everybody was at that time.
Yeah, so country became the haven you went to make money because you grew up from rock and you listened to country, and folks who listened to rock usually didn't have money to spend.
Yeah.
You know,
That's right.
So,
That's right.
What was so?
Because they were spending on something else.
Yeah. So really. So Norval Williams and Joe Phillips, Mr. Phillips owned WSSO.
Yeah, I remember Dennis Hudson. He's
Hudson,
the name that I knew.
I wish I could have worked at KOR in the late 80s when it was Dennis Hudson and Mike Grace.
Where was Butch
I
Luke?
remember Mike Grace, yeah.
Where was Butch?
Happy Butch was. You remember him?
Yeah, Happy Butch was at...
He was on several stations.
He was in Columbus.
He was in Columbus,
yeah.
yeah. So Mike Grace is actually still doing radio in Montgomery. He's doing a daily sports talk show.
Okay.
And so I've got... become friends with Bart Heisch, who is his college basketball guy on that show.
Yeah.
And Mike doesn't remember me from Adam, but I interviewed with Mike to work at KOR, and he left and went to Mix 106.
Okay.
So him and JT, John Thomas, who was on Super Talk forever, JT left. He went from KOR to Mix 106 down to Super
I didn't
Talk.
realize JT was on.
Yeah,
KOR too.
JT was here. JT did. Oh gosh, that was a great lineup. You had Mike Grace in the mornings. You had JT over lunch. You had Jim Scott, Jim Hyman doing the 2 to 6. No, Bob Yarbrough was over lunch. So Bob Yarbrough had been at Q101, and then Kevin Birchfield, Kevin James did the nights. That was a great lineup. Local radio, I just miss it.
Yeah,
So,
and the way it was done back, they showed the control room from WZZQ, and it was smaller than what we had at WROB, but it was literally a closet, but you had that control board that looked very familiar.
Where you
with
had
the view meters and the
program and cue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You
yeah.
had 2 turntables, which brought that up.
Yeah.
And you had all these pots that brought different levels up for your microphone and your different tables in your cart.
And you
player.
took your pot all the way down, and you got into audition mode. You click past
past
0.
one,
Yeah, and so you could.
So then you could hear when you were queuing up the record.
So did you, the name of the production company that did the documentary was called Q-Burn Films.
Oh, really?
So
okay.
You remember Q-Burn on records?
Yeah.
So what would happen, Jay, is needles. If you played a record a lot, and you would play to the beginning of the record, stop, and then you would back it up. To get it where it would start immediately. If you did that a ton of times, you would basically burn into that groove, and it was called Q-Burn.
Okay.
So as opposed to Ken Burns, Q-Burns.
Q-Burn.
So,
and also it's like, you could tell as you were learning, because if you didn't back it up quiet enough, you'd get this and then things starting off. That's it. But none of that happens anymore.
No.
That was just a fascinating time.
you remember, did you ever have the Techniques direct drive turntables for your
Yes, that's what we had for our turntables.
Man, those
I
were
believe that's right. As opposed to
Yeah, there were some belt-driven stuff before that, but Techniques came in with those direct drive.
what year was that?
Oh, gosh. That was probably 83, 84, something
Okay,
like
so
that.
I think we had belt-driven in the actual studio, and then there was another studio where they do commercials, and that was a little higher end. It was later produced, and they may have had direct drive turntables there, but it really makes a huge difference.
I would love to get one of those old boards and set up. I mean,
that'd be fun.
One of my retirement dreams would be to buy a little community AM radio station, which can't cost you a whole lot of money, and just program it and go live radio.
Oh, that'd be fun.
That'd be
I wish somebody had done that with WRLB when it sold, but that would have, they sold the call letters to somebody else, and the physical building, the station is just nobody owns it. I don't know who owns it anymore now.
Speaking of the physical building, they showed this Lamar Life building at the end of the movie, and it looked like it was in the woods somewhere. Is it just an abandoned building now? Do you know?
Yeah, it looks like it is an abandoned building because it had trees and stuff.
Yeah, it
growing
was
on the top
like
of it.
the ruins of Lamar Life.
Yeah, and I don't know because they talked about moving the station a couple of times.
Well, no, the Lamar Life building is in downtown
yeah.
Jackson. Yeah,
this is probably the station, or maybe been out where the tower was, because at first they were in this little kind of single level building.
Well, it's kind of
or
an
maybe that was
iconic
second.
look.
It does. It looks like it's got the same design as, but yeah,
Maybe it's been a camera angle to make it look like it was.
No, it was definitely in the woods because they did a drone shot out of it and flew back, and it's been abandoned. But it may have been where
the transmitter was.
Transmitter was, yeah.
Okay.
So man, just great days.
Yeah, good stuff. Good
Great
stuff.
day.
Like I said, I think whether you are familiar with WZZQ or not, it's a fascinating documentary. I did see in the end credits they had a thanks to Magnolia Film Festival.
I saw that.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. So, Jay, when you write up this description, if you'll embed the link to the movie, do you know how to do that?
Sure.
Yeah. And we'll put it in the show notes. So
we have show notes. Okay.
Well, we do have show notes. Show notes.
That's what
are
I
the
write.
description. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Jay, you've been writing the show notes for 5 years.
We just never.
We're gonna double your salary.
Triple it.
Oh.
Yeah. 3 times 0 is still 0.
That's right. Make sure.
But you can watch it on Mississippi Public Broadcasting's website, which also has a hook into the PBS website.
Yeah, and PBS app. Which I've got that.
Yeah. So it's almost 60 minutes, completely free. And if you listen to rock radio at any time growing up, even if you have no idea what WZZQ was, you absolutely need to listen to watch this. So, all right, that'll do it for us this week. We'll see you next time around.